I'm Andrew Parker with CDM Systems, and this is how it's made. You get a personal touch with CDM Systems. We aren't a big conglomerate. We aren't like some of our larger competitors that have many different divisions. The real difference is that we listen to what you want up front. The fact that we don't have shelf items, we aren't going to try to stick you with something that we've already designed or that's already on our shelves. We're going to custom build it for your application. We're going to listen to if you want different materials construction. We're going to listen to your maintenance department. We're going to listen to your engineering staff and try to incorporate those design details right up front. One individual has ownership of that project. That makes us awfully efficient for moving from A to B to C. We don't have hurdles of bureaucracy to deal with, which that makes us pretty efficient. QA/QC is something that CDM has always done internally. We've always checked our work, materials, etc. But in recent years, say the last decade, we've seen a big increase, especially on capital projects, for much more intrusive QA/QC practices. It's quite rewarding when a customer comes back to you because they trust you. And they trust your word, they trust your equipment, and we're never going to be the lowest cost supplier, but we are hopefully going to be the most value long-term for our customer. I'd say it's a 50-50 blend between people coming in and knowing pretty much exactly what they want to people coming in and saying, hey, I need something to move this from here to there. If they come to us with a spec as far as material construction that they're looking for, size of equipment, we can base it on that. Otherwise, if they don't come to us with anything, then we'll put together our recommendations and use that budgetary proposal as a baseline to start adding in options or different things for them to consider. The fact that we're dealing with a relatively small company that can handle big projects and we have one line responsibility. You're not going to get passed around from department to department. You're going to deal with the same project management group from start to finish on the project, from the proposal standpoint, engineering, detailing, design, QA/QC. You're going to have one project manager assigned to the project and deal with it throughout. Now, reading through specifications, at times you find exceptions, things that aren't good practice either for the application or for the equipment's overall success. And we will take exceptions, we'll bring those up, but we're not afraid to take exceptions. We want to make sure that the customer ends up with the best piece of equipment for the job, not necessarily something that conforms to a spec. There are applications that come our way that we just aren't the right fit for. We want to make sure that whatever we sell is a solution, not a perpetuation of an existing problem that they're having. We're giving the customer what they really need and what they really deserve if they're spending this kind of money, not something to meet your specification and provide them with inferior life. And we start. So you start by cutting the primary shapes, profiles, and whatnot. And then we move into welding. AWS certified, and all of our welders are AWS certified. We have an in-house CWI who goes through and provides visual weld inspections on 100% of the equipment that we provide. Tack out, we'll tack up the pieces, make sure everything's dimensionally verified, and then do full burn-in, full weld, and then do a pre-paint assembly. CDM's been forging the chain from the same foundry since 1984. Our chemistry microstructure, QA/QC checks as far as that's concerned, ultimate strength, depth of hardness, and hardness are second to none. All bores are machined, all pins are machined, and ensuring nice even loading and a nice uniform plane for the bearing surfaces to be in contact with. So the hardness, chemistry, and microstructure are what set us apart. We build our equipment for the application and hopefully it'll provide them with a lot of longevity. Decades ago, literally, we started doing these pre-paint assemblies at that time for match marking, alignment, and everything else to ensure that we didn't have that oh shucks moment much further down the line where it would be much costlier. Whether it's conveyor, bucket elevator, or screw conveyor, each section or sub-assembly is match marked for a specific piece of equipment. It's like putting together an erector set for big kids, more or less. You'll get the trough sidewalls will be labeled, marked, and welded in most cases with a letter. So when we put those, so section AA goes together. When that alignment occurs, we want to make sure it's a smooth transition. Smooth transition from the bottoms, sides, return rails. Elevations are all proper and equal. Inlet locations, discharge locations, support locations, lifting lug locations if they're critical, as well as your inspection door locations. So more or less we're fully assembling the conveyor prior to breaking it down for paint to make sure everything's right. And that way when you get something in the field, those sub-assemblies that you're receiving have already been bolted tight. We know that it's going to go together and require minimal field modification or alignment issues when they're installing the equipment. When we sandblast the equipment, we record every detail about it. Temperature, humidity, media used, surface profile, and within 1 day, to ensure there's no rust bloom, stuff goes right into paint as well. So you're ensuring a quality adhesion, mill thickness, and color to suit your application. So the paint process is actually quite important process in the whole fabrication standpoint, and the longevity of the equipment. A standard conveyor for exterior use with enamel or polyurethane type of coating on it can go relatively quick. But we do some insulating coatings where we're building out to 180 mils or 200 mils thick. That's over 3/16 of an inch of paint. And that's an insulating coating, so it's one used for personnel safety. If we're dealing with higher temps, 300-400 degree exterior temperature on the conveyor, it allows them to do a touch temp and meet OSHA standards. Or also, it helps keep heat in the product. Depending on the process, it may be advantageous for the client to maintain that heat in the product and not let it radiate out through the conveyor. Processes like that can take weeks. Say you have something that's highly abrasive in a highly corrosive environment. Well, having the exterior provided with a marine grade or a salt laden or a very corrosive resistant coating process can add years of life while still allowing us to build the conveyor out of carbon steel or hardened carbon steel to provide that abrasion resistance for the internal components. We take a lot of pride in our workmanship, so if I don't walk in and look at our equipment and say, yeah, that looks good, or we did it right, then it doesn't go out. It's a bit more of a white glove operation due to the fact that you are dealing with a finished painted product, so you don't want to damage it. You don't want to get rowdy with it. You want to make sure you take your time and assemble it finished. The final assembly will just be of each individual sub-assembly. We won't have the entire conveyor bolted up post-paint. Unless we're doing a full assembly test run on it. Typically, the sub-assemblies are your drive section, your terminal station, on a bucket elevator, your discharge head or your boot, and then little trunking sections, screw conveyor, same type of thing. If we can minimize that cost for the client, we will. If it makes sense for us to ship the conveyor fully assembled, 2 sections, half, to allow for easier installation or minimize the amount of field labor that's involved, that's something we try to focus on too. When you call CDM, or when a customer calls CDM after they've had an equipment for a decade or 15 years, and you get Kevin on the end of the line and you give him an equipment number from a conveyor that was built 15 years ago, and he can recall what job that went to or what project it went to, it's you don't have to say, hey, I need this specific chain. No, I need the chain for this conveyor, and we'll get you what you need. There's an efficiency there that is pretty hard to garner with a larger firm. There's always a sense of accomplishment when a project's completed. The fact that we aren't dealing with commodity-based equipment, like I said, we aren't building something that's the same every time. Everything's unique to that specific client or that specific application. So absolutely, there's a sense of accomplishment, and especially even more so than when it leaves, when it's installed and operating, and the customer calls back and says we're happy.